Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new weekend out there so far. Here to break down the latest on what's going on with the weather. The first thing we'll talk about is the tropics, and this will take up about 80 to 90% of this morning's video, and rightfully so because we have a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, overnight into this morning, model guidance has continued to uptrend on another tropical system developing in the Gulf of Mexico, so we got a lot to talk about with that. This does have a landfall risk, just like any other tropical system in the Gulf of Mexico. So what we'll do is we'll talk about what's going on right now. We'll discuss the latest from the National Hurricane Center, and we'll go over all model guidance specifically on the Gulf of Mexico risk here. We're not going to go over model guidance out here in the Central Atlantic with these fish storms, Leslie and Hurricane Kirk. No point in really talking about them much anymore. We'll discuss it a little bit, but not a lot at all. But we'll talk about the environment background that does support strengthening of whatever gets going here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll speak heavily on that. We'll talk a little bit about impacts, and then we'll break down what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Saturday. All in all, today will be a pretty non-significant day as far as weather across the lower 48. So not a whole lot to worry about back home as of right now. So with that being said, if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Subscribe. I forgot how to say that word. Like the video if you like, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below so I can do that, and it gives many other people an opportunity to pray over it also. If it's unspoken, just put unspoken. We got you covered, and more importantly, God's got you covered. So let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's make sure this is going to work. As always, we always got to test this out because this acts weird sometimes. And we're good to go. So I'll speak a little bit on Kirk. Kirk continues to be a powerful hurricane, not quite as strong as it was yesterday, but that makes sense because it is getting further north, starting to enter some cooler waters. So, of course, tropical systems do not like cooler waters, but still a powerful major Category 3 hurricane, continues to head north and eventually will head northeast and continue just to be out to sea. But it could bring impacts to Europe here in the next several days as this picks up some quicker forward speed. We got Leslie down here, which is also a hurricane. Category 1 hurricane, we'll see how strong it gets, but this will most likely turn out to sea at some point also and not bother anybody. But we will continue to watch. Leslie, Kirk is definitely already heading out to sea. Already out to sea, but you get what I'm saying, head further out to sea. So we got those two systems, and then our attention goes to the Gulf of Mexico. And we're going to zoom into the Gulf of Mexico here in a second, and we're watching this blob of convection right here. So this is a broad look at the entire Atlantic, Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, etc. Let's continue to move forward here. The latest from the National Hurricane Center. There'll be another Oh, we got it. Awesome. I love when that happens. I love when that works out. We got the latest update. I thought we were only going to be able to look at the 5 a.m. update, but the latest update, we got Leslie, which is an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. Kirk is still a 125-mile-per-hour major hurricane. Like I said, that's all we'll talk about those. There is another area of interest we are watching, has a 30% chance of something developing in this yellow area right here, but this will most likely turn out to sea too. Most of our focus, all of it, is going to go to this area right here. We have now bumped up from an 80 to a 90% chance of tropical development sometime in the next 7 days. So we now have a high risk. This is as high as it goes. So we are most likely going to get a tropical system out of this. And if we read the little discussion here, this is Invest 92L. It said a development of this system is expected, and a tropical depression or storm is likely to form later today or on Sunday while it moves slowly eastward over the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. So they are expecting the potential for a named storm out of this, which is Milton, sometime over the next 48 hours. In fact, you now have, let's look at the 2-day risk here. We now have a 70% chance of a depression or a named storm just in the next 2 days. So this is a real developing threat. All right. So we get a closer look at this. Look at this big blow up of convection that has continued to be here over the last several hours, overnight into this morning. So you see these white colors here. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have taller updrafts, deeper convection, and we just have sustained convection, more importantly. And yeah, this thing is well on its way to developing. Nothing concrete or really, I would say, truly organized, but it's on its way to becoming more organized. There's already shower and storm action well east of this system. Could be another precursor rain event. And we're going to talk about that. Not going to get too lost into that right at this second, but there's going to be a big push of rising air, meaning a big push of conditions is going to allow for a lot of rain well displaced well east of this system. So this is the main area right here. Okay, this is beginning to become a little bit more concerning. So let's take a look at model guidance. What we're going to do first on all model guidance is take a zoomed out look at this, and then we're going to zoom back in. And there's a reason I'm doing that, but let's not get too lost in all that. So this evening, okay, this is our tropical system. Watch out as we move into Sunday morning. We already have a 1002 millibar low developing. We could already have Tropical Storm Milton. That'll be the name you hear, not any other name. It'll be Milton. Okay, that's going to be the name that you hear over the next several days. That's what this will likely be, like almost 100% chance here now. It's wild how fast this is developed and is developing, kind of a developing storyline that it's going to become very loud over the next 24 to 48 hours. But here it is. We got a 1002 millibar low. We take it another 24 hours into Monday morning. All of a sudden we have a hurricane. Okay. We continue to keep this going. Look at all this moisture getting pushed into Florida before the event. We go into Tuesday morning. So let's go on and dip and look a little bit closer now. Hurricanes at the bottom of your screen right here. Here in the next, what is this? The next 72 hours, it has this going from just an invest to almost a major hurricane. GFS says a 953 millibar hurricane. That's at least a category 2. Okay, this is definitely you never quite know what a worst case scenario is, right? Or a best case scenario is, but this is definitely one of your worst case scenarios. It continues to march it eastward. We get into Tuesday evening. We have a 947 millibar hurricane at this point. And one thing, remember we were talking about Helene and we were talking about all the green and yellow and orange and whatever just dispersed northward when Helene was going this way? Well, you get this big kind of pre-event of rain that gets pushed eastward, east of what will likely be Tropical Storm or Hurricane Milton. So this would dump a ton of heavy rain on Florida before the main event even comes, just like what happened in the mountains of North Carolina and surrounding areas. Let's hope that's not the way this develops, but there's a growing concern that this is the way it does. So we continue to move forward. We take it to Wednesday morning. Look how far north. I think this is a very far north outlier here. If you listen to my video last night, I talked about I don't think that this is going to impact states outside of Florida. I think it could bring a little rain, some gusty winds into Georgia, maybe the low country of South Carolina. But as far as significant impacts, I think this will be mainly a Florida event. But we get into Wednesday morning, folks, and it has a 944 millibar hurricane. I mean, that's a major hurricane going now into the bend of Florida, of all places, that's just been slammed lately. Takes this north of Tampa. Do I think this is going to go north of Tampa? In my opinion, I don't. I really think this will be a Tampa point south deal, but I could be totally wrong. The further north this is, the stronger the system it looks like. That has been the general theme. But look at all this rain being pushed out ahead of this system. And this is you might as well say a worst case scenario. GFS takes a major hurricane north of Tampa. Then it gets kind of shunted south, even brings some rain into southeast, some gusty winds, even some little bit of storm surge, even into Georgia and to South Carolina. Now, I want to say this real quick. I know a lot of people, I've only saw one comment actually say it, so it's hard to group, anything in a majority here. But, a lot of what's going to happen here is there's been a lot of crazy viral social media posts saying there's another storm coming, especially last week. It was going crazy, and this is going to prove all of them people right. But just know that it's such a broad thing, right? There's always been a signal here for something, but, a lot of people were saying that based off really absolutely nothing but trying to create fear. This is a legitimate threat now, so I'll just leave it at that. We might as well just move past that. This is a legitimate threat now for Florida, unfortunately. Okay, but we get this off the coast of the southeast, and this could continue to bring impacts to the coastal regions of the Carolinas and maybe Georgia, but I really don't think it'll bring significant impacts. This is a far north outlier. You look at the latest Euro now, okay? Euro develops this. We get into Sunday morning. It's about the same strength as the GFS. It's a low-end tropical storm. We continue to move forward here. We get into Monday morning, tropical storm just north of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then we take it to Tuesday morning. Starts to pick up some forward speed here, and we'll go on and zoom in now. Okay, there it is, the Euro, 988 millibar lows, probably a tropical storm. Might get it to Category 1 status. For example, this is Wednesday morning. Look how further south it is. GFS makes landfall way up here as a major hurricane. The European is south of Tampa, closer to Fort Myers, as maybe a strong tropical storm, Category 1 hurricane, which would bring significant impacts. But once again, look at all the rain pushed out ahead of this system. Almost a secondary actual low pressure. In fact, I kind of think it is. There's a secondary area of lower pressure, I would say. But this makes landfall Wednesday morning. And I do need to mention the time. The GFS is more so Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. The Euro more so Wednesday morning, and continues to bring a lot of impacts over Florida. But look, it doesn't bring hardly anything up to Georgia or South Carolina. Then this heads on off. What about the icon? Same thing. Broad look at things. Icon, as we get into Monday morning, already has a tropical storm Milton here. And then we get into Tuesday morning. The icon wants to deepen this to just about a Category 1 hurricane. I would guess a 983 millibar storm would be just about a Category 1 hurricane or strong tropical storm. And then we take that southeast frame look at this thing. And here it comes creeping up on your screen. It's very far south. I mean, it keeps this really tucked south in the Gulf of Mexico. And then it makes landfall as a tropical storm, which we hope, I think that's the best case scenario, is a tropical storm. Makes landfall here south of kind of Fort Myers, just flat out southwest Florida as a tropical storm sometime, Wednesday p.m. and then proceeds to head over the peninsula of Florida. So as you can tell, the GFS is an outlier. Absolutely. Now, you look at the European ensemble guidance. We start this from Monday morning. You see all these L's clustered up here. I know that it's very small. You're probably not able to see the actual number here, but we certainly have some stronger members already developing Monday morning. And then we take this into Tuesday morning. I know it's hard to see on your screen, but remember the European ensemble, the EPS, this makes up 51 members and then groups them all in an output like this for us. So it's not literally like there's 50 hurricanes out here. It's just a bunch of runs kind of simulated and then creates a mean. So you see how this area gets green. That means we have more members and we have stronger members. And check out these L's over here. This is that secondary low I'm talking about that could bring a lot of rain to Florida before future Milton comes in. And we keep this going. We got some strong members in here on the European ensemble, which now is a weaker solution. Remember, it was a stronger solution yesterday. Now GFS is the more aggressive solution. So you got some strong members. I would say the further north members are hurricanes. The further south you get, the weaker the system looks, the higher the millibar. The lower the millibar, the further north in these members. Like you got some 940s, 970s, 960s, 950s, and that's just flat out hurricanes. But all these, not one member gets like up into the panhandle of Florida or Georgia or South Carolina. All of them hit the peninsula of Florida. Okay, so yeah. That is the ensemble and the global models. Now, first run that we got of the hurricane models. We can look at the hurricane models now. The first thing we'll look at is the HFA models. Make sure that is correct. Yeah, the HFA, this initializes this as a 998 millibar low this morning. And we really don't know what the low pressure is right now. So it could be that low. But I would argue that's a little bit too low. Now we start to get into Sunday. Has a 993 millibar low in the Bay of Campeche, picks up some forward speed. The HFA model, and this is the first time I'm looking at this. I'm looking at this new with you guys, okay? Sunday has a 963 millibar hurricane already Monday morning. We get into Monday evening, it has a 950 millibar hurricane. That's a Category 2 or 3 hurricane, probably a 3. And then it deepens it into a Category 4, maybe even 5 hurricane. We know that the hurricane models tend to be aggressive. They bounce back and forth a lot, but they're worth showing. And this is certainly a terrible case scenario because it deepens it into, this is as far out as it looks like it wants to go for us. This takes us all the way out to about 11 p.m. Tuesday Eastern Time, and it has a Category 4 or 5 hurricane, 926 millibar pressure. And here is the west coast of Florida showing up on your screen. We do not want this to happen. I can tell you the structure of the storm makes sense. You got dry air wrapping into it. Man, let's hope that that does not happen. What about the HFB model? Okay, we keep this going. Strengthens it a little bit slower, 999 millibar lower. 999 millibar tropical storm Sunday morning. We take it into Monday morning. Look at this. It weakens it. That's a huge difference. We compare the H-half-B model, the H-half-A model for Monday morning. Monday morning on the H-half-A model has it as a Category 2 hurricane. H-half-B model, it's barely a tropical storm. It weakens it. Okay? And then we get into Tuesday morning, proceeds to not get this thing together. And it's wild. The H-half-B model never fully gets this together. So that is a wild difference between two hurricane models. Probably one of the wildest differences I've seen. In fact, I'm sure that'll get a lot of attention on the weather world. Now, this is the H-Wolf model. Unfortunately, it only goes out 66 hours for us. But, that's good. We don't want to go too far out with this because there's going to be so much changes back and forth. But the H-Wolf model, we get into Sunday morning, 991 millibar low. And I believe this hurricane model is retiring. I think the H-mod model is too. So we're not going to be able to look at these anymore in the future. But, we get all the way into Sunday morning. Already, it kind of follows the H-half-A model. Has an aggressive scenario here where we have pretty much a strong hurricane. Well put together hurricane, I might add too. And then we take it all the way into Monday evening, and it has a major hurricane Monday evening. So let's hope that these two models are wrong and the more conservative H-half-B model is right. Now we got the H-mod model too. It's worth showing here. We get into Sunday morning, already has a tropical storm. We get into Monday morning, and it looks like 3 out of the 4 models are showing aggressive scenarios with just a flat-out major hurricane developing. The H-half-B model, I'm not going to call it an outlier because it might be onto something, but I think it kind of is just because it doesn't develop it at all. But, we take this into Tuesday morning, folks, and we have a Category 4 or 5 hurricane developing just north of the Yucatan. And then, we go all the way to Wednesday morning, major Category 4 hurricane, and this is as far out as it goes, with Florida beginning to probably enter your screen here in the next few frames. So this is going to change a lot, guys. I wouldn't freak out from these models, but I can tell you sometimes the hurricane models do sniff it out first. I mean, they are the hurricane models, but a lot of times they are too crazy, too aggressive, things like that. So let's go on and talk about let's look at the GFS. So we're going to look at the environment background from the GFS. Why does the GFS do what it does? Why does it strengthen it? We're not going to focus too much on the track because I think it gets it a little bit too far north. But if we're looking at the environment background here, right? Okay, we're going to initialize this. Let's move this a little bit forward. Let's move this into Monday evening, which it looks like this is when this potentially undergoes a period of deepening and strengthening. All right, so if we look at this, it's hard to really explain what's going on. There's a lot of westerly flow on top of the system because of a trough digging down. But there's a lot of air being dispersed outward. Like if you look right into here, air moving towards it right into here, but then getting pushed outward right into here. So a good portion of the environment, there's air being pushed away. A little bit of air being pushed against the system on the western side, and there is air being flat out just dispersed outward on the eastern side of the system. On the northern side, it gets a little weird. You just got a stout westerly flow, but there is just a lot of disbursement of air on most sides of this storm system. And we talk about this, and this is what you're looking at here is the airflow and directional flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 40,000 feet up in the air. The tropical system itself is in a much lower placement in the atmosphere. The actual cyclonic flow of the system is going like this, actually. Okay, those areas are probably going to be a little bit everywhere. So it's actually spinning like this in the low levels cyclonically, right? And air is being pushed out away from the system. This allows for an environment that supports rising air. So as air is being just thrown outward from the system, this allows for more air to rise, and it's just a continuous cycle that allows to create a very moist environment for these tropical systems. Therefore, they have the opportunity to strengthen because tropical systems like moist air. They do not like dry air and shear. So that's what allows us to really deepen. It gets a little weirder as we move forward, as we kind of get in this area. The system is able to really develop a tight core on the GFS, a very moist cocoon atmosphere around the actual center low pressure. So even though you got a ton of air right here in the upper levels of the atmosphere being thrown up against the western side of the system and creates shear on the western side of the system. The dry air that then tries to move in after it kind of eats up some of the convections cannot really get to the actual center of low pressure because it's developed such a tight core. Now look at all this air being dispersed outward like this. This would throw a lot of rainfall ahead of the system into Florida. So it's an interesting environment here. You know, it's definitely trending in the wrong direction for a better environment. Okay. Now we talk about that precursor event. You know, the green colors on your screen is moist air. The brown is dry air. And one thing you'll notice here on the GFS, Hurricane Milton in this case on the GFS, Monday evening, is still way out over the Gulf of Mexico, right? Even still in areas of the Bay of Campeche. But if you notice here, a lot of dry air right up here, right? Dry air already trying to wrap into the west side of the system. But look at all this moist air getting thrown well ahead of this system. There's already kind of like a secondary low somewhere into here maybe. But a lot of moist air getting pushed outward to the east. This is going to put an opportunity for a lot of heavy rain to Florida before our main system actually moves in down here. Does that sound familiar? It absolutely does, because Helene did the same thing. Helene, right into here, threw a lot of moist air out of head of the system, and then the actual system moved in and did what it did, causing, you know, devastation along its way. Okay, so it's very interesting that we're getting kind of the same look here, but more of a zonal look instead of like south to north. But you continue here, and this is what I'm talking about how this system develops such a moist atmosphere on the GFS specifically. Here it is, a ton of dry air trying to wrap into the system, right? It's getting in all the way to the southeast side of the system. Dry air trying to wrap into the cyclonic flow. You see this little streak of dry air right here also, but it's not able to get there. It's not even able to get close before ultimately making landfall. And in fact, you look at a closer look at the, let's see if we can here, at the GFS, okay, 944 millibar low. The dry air makes it in right the last second. In fact, 944 millibar low, and then we take it to Wednesday early afternoon. You see how the millibar actually rises? The dry air is actually able to get in there right at the last second and begin to weaken this system if something like this was to happen. So you see how the dry air, see how a little bit of dry air gets on the southern side of the system? You would hope that that can get to it faster. Okay, a lot of moist air out ahead of this system. Dry air trying to wrap in for dear life at the last second to sort of lessen the impact. So we got a lot to figure out with this system, and we'll continue to keep you guys updated. But, you know, I think ahead of this system, we'll start the HER model, short-range model out for tomorrow morning for Florida. Look as we get into tomorrow for Florida. Look at all this rain pushing into the peninsula of Florida, and I think that tomorrow afternoon really starts an extremely wet period of weather, and then capping it all off with a tropical system before you have an opportunity to get into some of that dry air at the end of the week. But we got a messy week of weather for the state of Florida on the way. And if we look at the rainfall from the Weather Prediction Center between now and this time next week, next Saturday morning, several inches of rain is possible. And I would just continue to stay tuned, guys, because there's an opportunity that this could increase. But, you know, you look in North Florida and you look in Georgia, look how the rainfall cuts off significantly. Okay, so this is definitely a peninsula of Florida type event, and maybe only. So that's an update on the tropics. As far as what's happening back at home, pretty quiet weather. Let's get this radar back going here. We got some rain up here. We actually get some thunderstorms up here into the Great Lakes region. We'll speak on that. Waking up to a washout up here in Maine, and definitely a rainy morning, kind of a sit outside your porch with a cup of coffee kind of morning here in Maine and just listen to the rainfall. But moisture already building down here in the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit of rain down here in South Texas, rain in southeast, just kind of pockets of light rain. Some of this might not even be hitting the ground. But that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, advisories, red flag warnings for all the UP of Michigan. So we need some rain up here. But just hopefully we don't get any lightning strikes or anything like that in today's severe weather risk. But red flag warnings across the entire plains, northern plains, high wind warnings. We got heat alerts that are continuing, heat advisories, excessive heat warnings for the southwest. So the excessive rainfall outlook, there's not a whole lot going on. Didn't even pull it up here, but there is a risk of thunderstorms along the Gulf coastline. And then check out the slight risk in the southern UP and then northeastern Wisconsin. There is a slight risk of severe weather. Tornado threat below 2%. Wind threat just a 5, but it's the hail threat that could be a more concern today in this slight risk, which is ultimately what's driving the slight risk. So we'll talk about that here in a second when we get to the north central frame. The southeast today, kind of the same pattern as yesterday. We'll get a little bit of flow, a little outflow boundary action that will bring you guys some thunderstorm activity for northern Florida, southeast Georgia. Some moisture continues to build in the Gulf of Mexico with what will soon to be, not Helene. I'm probably going to do that a few times. Milton. But we'll get some rain possible in southeast Louisiana. A lot of this will stay off the coastline, though, but we're certainly going to get some tropical rains that begin to build in for tomorrow for the state of Florida. Everybody else, though, is pretty quiet weather, warm. We'll continue to see the rain across Maine throughout the morning, but I think as we get into this afternoon, this evening, this will begin to clear off into Atlantic Canada. Might still deal with some clouds, but ends up being a nice evening across New England, the northeast. And then another system will try to swing into the north as we get into tomorrow. But nice weather. The south central U.S., we've mentioned that maybe a little bit of rain and storm activity along the Gulf Coast. We will definitely have a risk of some storms across extreme South Texas, Corpus Christi down to Brownsville. We'll definitely get some storm action. Everybody else, the rest of Texas, 95% of Texas will be clear of weather today. Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri. It's been very quiet in these areas lately. Very, very quiet for the last couple months. I feel like it's been since Beryl since we've had anything significant that's happened in this area. I really think it has been. So it's pretty wild. Just had a quiet streak of weather here. But we know we can get wild in this area of the country. North central U.S., quiet throughout the afternoon, and we're going to have a risk of some thunderstorms. There'll definitely be cold air aloft. This will allow for some large hail. Maybe not large, but there might be some storms up here in the UP of Michigan. Northern sections of Wisconsin this evening that could produce some hail. This system will swing through pretty fast, and then by the time we get, like for example, I'll do a timeline here. This is about 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So system will kind of swing in and out, a little bit of cooler air to follow. So the western U.S., a quiet day of weather, not a whole lot to speak on at all, if anything at all. Most of the activity is the jet has been displaced up into Canada, so high pressure pretty much affecting everybody out west. So there's not a whole lot going on just because all your weather is flowing to your north. So temperatures, it will be a cooler day in the New England area. It's cloud cover and just some rain lingers around 50s. And then you get away from that, you get into the 60s and 70s. You get into the southeast, humidity begins to build as you move south. We got this kind of area of hotter weather that gets into the Midwest, the 80s and 90s. And it will continue to be hot across the central plains like Kansas, Oklahoma, 80s and 90s. I mean, even to the mid-90s in areas of Kansas. Southwest, pretty hot. And then we get into the northern Rockies, the Pacific Northwest, 50s and 60s. So cooler. So I'm going to get off here. I can hear my kids yelling in the background. But you guys have a wonderful day. I'll try to get you a video this evening. I am going to the football game. My Gamecocks are playing Ole Miss, and that's at 3:30. So if I do get a video, it'll be a little bit later, but I'll definitely try to get one to you folks. So God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you again soon.